Start with the Unveiled Mysteries. So the forwards. It was through Saint Germain's assistance that I was prevailed to have the experience recorded in this series of books, and permission has been granted for them to be put in a form which can be given to the public. No one can realize, unless he too has had similar assistance, how great the Eternal is, my love and gratitude to him and those other Ascended Masters whose assistance I had. With the exception of Saint Germain, the real name of the Ascended Masters, exact locations, records, and treasures herein described are withheld intentionally at his command, for reasons that are obviously because only the service of love and the invitation from the Ascended Master is the right earned to be with them in visible, tangible, living, breathing bodies. Any other way of approach is bound to meet with disappointment and failure, for the Great Presence, the power which has guarded through the centuries, guards them still. One's own inner purity, strength, and attainment are the only passports by which one enters into these activities and associations with Ascended Masters comes about. When an individual, by conscious self-corrections of his weakness, reach a certain point, nothing in the universe can keep him from them. In America is one of the most ancient foci of the Great White Brotherhood, which has been working for man's freedom since his advent upon the planet. Some of the activities within the retreat are revealed to the readers that he may find he be ready, make conscious contact through his inner light with the greater light pouring out through the powerful centers of God's radiation, thereby drink once again the fountains of the ancient wisdom, carrying the crystal cup of peace, love, and strength to his weary brothers. The purpose of putting this book into the hands of the public is to convey to the individual the encouragement and strength that will lift and sustain him through the transition periods we are now in, and reveal something of the sane and sound foundation upon which the future of our country and coming age is this hour being built. This book is written in the embrace of the majestic, towering presence of Mount Shasta, whose apex is robed forever in that pure, glistening white, the symbol of the light of eternity. Its pages are a record of a way by which I was brought in touch with the beloved Master Saint Germain and those other great Ascended Masters who labor ceaselessly to assist humanity of this earth as it struggles on the path of peace, love, light, everlasting perfection. I, whose experience it was, held steadfast to the great dominant desires from within to see, to hear, and to know infallibly the truth of life. I was led step by step to realize and accept my mighty God presence within my own being, the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world, the Christ. A way to make contact with the Christ light, its all-knowing omnipresence, the unerring activity, was revealed to me, and I give it to the readers in these pages. I can record only a part of the events that took place and the instructions I received. One by one, the great desires have been fulfilled because these desires were unselfish. My quest for truth and happiness has been long and steady, but I have found both. No human being can take them from me because they are eternal and come from my own great God self. In presenting this experience, it is with the deepest prayers that the reader may receive the light, be blessed, and prosper on his way as he walks the path of truth, which is the only place where permanent happiness can be found. There and there only will the seeker after light find eternal peace and activity in the service of love. If my present effort in sending these books forth into the world can carry some of the love, light, happiness I have received to those of the earth who also have been seeking the light, I shall have been amply rewarded. That saying, the saying that truth is stranger than fiction applies to this book. It is for the reader to accept or reject as he chooses, but the Ascended Masters who help I have received have said to me often, the more humanity can accept our presence, the wider they open the doors for us to pour greater and greater help to them. But the rejections of us by those who do not agree with the truth does not remove us or the truth from existence and activity in the universe. Those who do accept the truth herein recorded will find a new and powerful force entering their lives. Each copy carries with it a mighty presence, its radiation and sustaining powers. All who study these pages honestly, deeply, sincerely, and persistently will know and make contact with the reality of their presence and power. Those who read this work, I wish to say that these experiences are as real and true as mankind's existence on this earth today. And they all occurred during August, September, and October 1930 upon Mount Shasta, California, USA. Godfre Ray King. And it says the Ascension, so it's like a little poem here. I feel my God flame touch my brow, the breath of love eternal now. I raise my eyes, and lo, I see my own great God self over me. A dazzling cloud envelops all. I hear my real God presence call. I feel a surge of love, great might. I enter deep, the breath in light. I see within the pulsing flame, listen and hear my seeker name. I feel the glow of the great flame breath. I am the victor over death. I stood forth free ascended now. To my heart's light all things do bow. I am being of cause alone, and that cause, love the sacred tone. I pour out life. I lift, I raise. My heart overflow and sing its praise. My power strengthens and inspires. My great light rays are God's own fires. I am a son. I am love. I am sun. My love is light. All else grows dim, earth lost to sight. I know I am just God, the one, the source, the great central sun. So meeting the Master, Mount Shasta stood out boldly against the western sky, surrounded at the base by a growth of pine and fir trees that made it look like a jewel of diamond shining whiteness, held in the filigree setting of green. The snow-covered peaks glistening and changed color from moment to moment as the shadow lightened in the sun's descent towards the horizon. Rumor said there was a group of men, divine men in fact, called the Brotherhood of Mount Shasta, who formed a branch of the Great White Brotherhood, and that this focus from very ancient times had continued unbroken down to the present day. I had been sent on government business to a little town situated at the foot of the mountain, and while thus engaged, occupied my leisure time trying to unravel this rumor concerning the White Brotherhood. I knew, through travels in the Far East, that most rumors, myths, and legends have somewhere as their origin a deep underlying truth that usually remains unrecognized by all but those who are real students of life. I fell in love with Mount Shasta the very morning, almost voluntarily, saluted the spirit of the mountain and the members of the order. I sensed something very unusual about the entire locality, and in the light of the experience that followed, I do not wonder that some of them cast their shadows before. Long hikes on the trail had become my habit whenever I wanted to think things out alone or make decisions of serious import. Here on this great giant of nature I found recreation, inspiration, peace that soothed my soul and invigorated my mind and body. I had planned such a hike for pleasure, as I thought, to spend some time deep in the heart of the mountain, when the following experience entered my life to change, if so completely that I could almost believe that I was on another planet. Before my return to the usual routine in which I had been engaged for months, the morning in question I started out at daybreak, deciding to follow where fancy led me. In vague sort of way, asked God to direct my path. By noon I had climbed high on the side of the mountain where the view to the south was beautiful as a dream. As the day advanced, it grew very warm, and I stopped frequently to rest and enjoy the full and remarkable stretch of country around McLeod River Valley and town. It came time for lunch, and I sought the mountain spring for clear, cold water. Cupped in my hands, I bent down to I bent down to feel it as an electrical current passed through my body from my head to foot. I looked around, and directly behind me stood a young man who, at first glance, seemed to be someone on a hike like myself. I looked more closely and realized immediately he was no ordinary person. As this thought passed through my mind, he smiled and addressed me, saying, "My brother, if you will hand me your cup, I will give you a much more refreshing drink than spring water." I obeyed, and instantly the cup was filled with a creamy liquid. Handing it back to me, he said, "Drink it." I did so, and must have looked my astonishment, for, while the taste was delicious, the electrifying, vivifying effect in my mind and body made me gasp with surprise. I did not see him put anything into the cup, and I wondered what was happening. "That which you drank," he explained, "comes directly from universal supply, pure and vivifying as life itself. In fact, it is life's omnipresent life, for it exists everywhere about us. It is subject to our conscious control and direction, willing obedience when we love enough, because all the universe obeys behest of love. Whatsoever I desire manifests itself. When I command in love, I held out the cup, and that which I desire for you appeared. See, I have but to hold out my hand, and if I wish to use gold, gold is here." Instantaneously, there lay in his palm a disc about the size of a $10 gold piece. Again he continued, "I see within you a certain inner understanding of the great laws, but you are not outwardly aware of it enough to produce that which you desire direct from omnipresent universal supply. You have desired to see something of this kind so intensely, so honestly, and so determinedly, it could no longer be withheld from you. However, perception is one of the least important activities of the great truth of being. If your desires had not been free from selfishness and satisfaction of phenomena, such an experience could not have come to you. When leaving home this morning, you thought you were coming on a hike. That is, so far the outer activity of your mind was concerned. In the deeper, larger sense, you were really following the urge of your inner God self that led you to the person, place, and conditions where your most intense desires could be fulfilled. The truth of life is you cannot desire that which is not possible of manifestation somewhere in the universe. The more intense the feelings within the desire, the more quickly it will be attained. However, if one is foolish enough to desire something that will injure another of God's children or any other part of his creation, then that person will pay the penalty in discord and failure somewhere in his own life experience. It is very important to realize fully that God's intent for every one of his children is abundance of very good and perfect things. He created perfection and endowed his children with exactly the same powers. They can create and maintain perfection also, express God's dominion over the earth and all that is therein. Mankind was originally created in the image and likeness of God. The only reason all do not manifest this domain is because they do not use their divine authority, that with which each individual is endowed, and by which he is intended to govern the world. Thus they are not obeying the laws of love by pouring out peace and blessings to all creation. This comes about through their failures to accept and acknowledge themselves temples of the Most High Living God and to hold this acknowledgement with eternal recognition. Humanity in its present seeming limitations of time, space, and activity is in the same condition a person in need would be to whom someone held out a handful of money. If the needing one did not step forwards and accept the money held out to him, how in the world could he ever have benefit which it could bring? The mass of mankind is in exactly this state of consciousness today and will continue in it until they accept the God within their hearts as the owner, giver, and doer of all the good that has ever come into the lives of the world. The personal self and every individual must acknowledge completely, unconditionally, that the human or outer activity of conscious has absolutely nothing of its own. Even the energy by which one recognizes the great God within is radiated into the personal self by the greater God self. Love and praise of the great God, the great self within, and the attention maintained focused upon truth, health, freedom, peace, supply, or any other thing that you may desire, for a right use persistently held in your conscious thought and feeling will bring them into your use and world as surely as there is a great law of magnetic attraction in the universe. The eternal law of life is that whatever you think and feel, you will bring into form. Where your thought is, there you are, for you are consciousness, and whatever you meditate on becomes you. When you allow this mind to dwell upon thoughts of hate, condemnation, lust, envy, jealousy, criticism, fear, doubt, or suspicion, and allow these feelings of irritation to generate within him, he will certainly have discord, failure, and disaster in his mind, body, and world. As long as he persists in allowing his attention to be held by such thoughts, whether they be about nation, person, place, condition, or things, he is absorbing these activities into the substance of his mind, his body, his affairs, and the fact that he is compelling forces and forcing them into his experience. All these discordant activities reach the individual and his world through his thoughts and feelings. Feelings often flash before one is aware of the thought in the outer consciousness, which he might use to control it. This kind of experience should teach him how great is the energy within his many creations, which has accumulated through habit. The feelings and activities of life is the most unguarded point of human consciousness. It is the accumulated energy by which thoughts are propelled into the atomic substance, and thus do thoughts become things. I tell you, the need of guarding the feelings cannot be emphasized too strongly. To control of the emotion plays the most important part of anything in life. In maintaining balance in the mind health, in the body success, and accomplishments in affairs and the world of the personal self or every individual. Thoughts can never become things until they are clothed with feeling. The Holy Ghost or Holy Spirit is the feeling side of the life God and the activity of divine love or the mother expression of deity. That is why the sin against the Holy Ghost is referred to as that which brings such great distress, because any discord in a feeling breaks the law of love, which is the law of balance, harmony, and perfection. The greatest crime in the universe against the law of love is humanity's almost ceaseless sending forth of every kind of irritable and destructive feelings. One day the race will come to realize and recognize that the sinister, destructive forces manifesting on the earth and in its atmosphere, generated, mark you, by human thought and feeling, have only entered the affairs of individuals or nations through the lack of control in the emotions of everyone's daily personal experience. Even destructive thoughts cannot express themselves as action events and become physical things, except by passing through the world of feelings. For it is in these phases of manifestation that the activity of coalescing the physical atom upon thought form takes place. As the noise from a sudden explosion shocks the nervous system of one who hears it, setting up a trembling sensation in the cellular structure of the body, in the exact way do the flares of irritation, feeling shocked, disturbed, and disarranged in finer substance in the atomic structure of the mind, body, and world of the person who sends them out, consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or intentionally. Discordant feelings is the producer of conditions we call disintegration, old age, lack of memory, and every other failure in the world of human experience. The effects upon the body structure is the same as that produced upon the building of the mortar holding the bricks together. Were so received repeated shocks, and each day those were to be increased. This continued shock would shake apart the particles composing the mortar, and the building would collapse into a chaotic mess, and the form be no more. That is what mankind is constantly doing to the atomic structure of the human body. To give expression to the discordant thoughts and feelings in oneself is the course of least resistance, and the habitual activity of the undeveloped discipline and the woeful individual who refuses to understand the laws of his own being and bring the personal self, which is but the instrument of expression, into obedience to the law. He who cannot or will not control his thoughts and feelings in a bad way, for every door of his consciousness is wide open to the disintegrating activities thrown off by other minds and emotions of other personalities. This is where you can get bombarded by really lots of people's twisted thoughts and all kinds of things that really can affect and pull you up and down in different ways. And that, like, you're trying to stay in something really positive or good, but they keep at it and it pulls you. And when you go into emotion, like I say, that's when you start really affecting everything. And on this earth, this is what sorcerers, black magic, people who believe they're powerful do. They want to distort reality. They want to make everybody negative. They want to make really good people look very dark and insane. He who cannot or will not control his thoughts and feelings in the bad way, of every door of his consciousness is wide open to the disintegrating activities thrown off by other minds and the emotions of other personality. So if somebody hates you, that hate affects you. It literally pulls you in all kinds of ways. And you got to learn how to try to shift and move around. Like me and Cindy, like this morning, we talked about a lot of those things, and that happened, and it pulled us in different ways. But then we were able to shift because she could feel it. She could see and understand the changes and everything that were happening and going on. And this is where we have to be the masters of this holographic machine. But there's billions and billions of things trying to control this. And to be a master, you have to really learn and understand. And that's in all cultures, all spirituality, because every culture, whether it's Christianity or not, has a negative force. Whether you want to call it black magic, sorcery, whatever, there is a counter. If you're light, then you're being challenged by the dark. If you're dark, you're being challenged by the light. And there's this. But people don't want to understand it. It is easy to give away to discordant thoughts, feelings, and activities, to be sure, because the masses of mankind are submerged, as it were, by the environment and association entirely created by themselves. The individual, through his control and outer consciousness, must make the effort to raise out of this condition by his own free will in order to transcend these limitations permanently. No one can hope to get rid of his life and world of misery, discord, and destruction until he leashes his own thoughts and feelings. In this way, he refuses to let the life flowing through his mind and body become qualified by the discord resulting from very little disturbing occurrences in the world about him. At first, such a disciple does require determined, continuous effort, for the thoughts and feelings of 95% of humanity runs as uncontrolled and free as a little tramp dog. However, no matter how much effort it takes to bring these two activities under control, it is worth any moment of time and energy expended, and no real permanent dominion of one's life the world can take place without it. It will be my pleasure and privilege to teach you the use of the higher laws, and their applications will enable you to release true wisdom and bring about all perfection. The first step to control of yourself is the stilling of all outer activity of both mind and body. 15 to 30 minutes at night before retiring, and in the morning before beginning the day. So you meditate anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Morning before beginning the day, work using the following exercises will do wonders for anyone who will make the necessary effort. For the second step, make certain of being undisturbed, and after becoming very still, picture and feel your body enveloped in dazzling white light. The first 5 minutes while holding this picture, recognize and feel intensities and connections between the outer self and your mighty God within, focusing your attention upon the heart center and visualizing it as a golden sun. The next step is the acknowledgement. I now joyously accept the fullness of the mighty God presence, the pure Christ. Feel the great brilliancy of the light and intensify it in every cell of your body for at least 10 minutes longer. Then close the meditation by the command, I am a child of light. I love the light. I serve the light. I live the light. I am protected, illumined, supplied, sustained by the light. I am blessed, the light. Remember always one becomes that upon which he meditates. And since all things have come forth from the light, light is the supreme perfection and control of all things. Contemplation and adoration of the light compels illumination to take place in the mind, health, strength, in order to come into the body in peace, harmony, and success to manifest in the affairs of every individual who will really do it and seeks to maintain it, all the way down to the centuries in every age, under every condition. We are told by all who have expressed the greater accomplishments of life that the light is the supreme. Light is everywhere, and in the light exists all things. The truth is just as true today as it was millions of years ago, far back as there is any record of humanity. The wise and great ones of all ages are portrayed with a radiation of light about them, emanating from the head and the body. And this is where in ancient pictures you see this aura lit up with all the colors. This light is real, just as real as the electric light in your home. The day is not far distant when machines will be constructed to reveal the emanations of light, but every individual, to the physical sight of anyone who cares to observe it, such a machine will also show the contamination or discoloration that becomes the cloud around the light of God, which the person's self generates through discordant thoughts and feelings. This and this only is the way by which the energy of the great life stream becomes polluted. If you will practice this exercise faithfully and feel it in every atom of your mind and body with deep, deep intensity, you will receive abundant proof of the tremendous activity, power, and protection that abides and is forever active within the light. When you have experienced this for even a short time, you will need no further proof. You become your own proof. The light is the kingdom. That's why I say look for the light. People don't want to do that. They're too busy wanting to look for the darkness. Search for the light. It's a simple thing to do. If you astral travel, if you meditate in that, you always go into the light. You just go from darkness into the light. What did the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Mexicans and that? They built underground tunnels, and they would go in and have altars, and they would walk down underground in the darkness to the light. And when you birth, what do? You go through the channel and you come out into the light. When your soul comes into the baby in the stomach, it goes through the darkness and it comes out into the light. It's all about the light. That's all it ever really was. Enter into it and be at peace. Return to the Father's house. After the first 10 days of using this exercise, it is well to do it 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. We often hear the complaint, oh, I cannot give all of that time to any who are of this opinion. I wish to say simply this. The time the average person spends in criticizing, condemning, and blaming people, conditions, and things for not being something other than they are, if occupied with this recognition, and the use of this light will make heaven manifest on earth for the individual who dares to try and has determination enough to maintain it. Nothing is impossible. The light never fails. The light is God's way of creating and maintaining order, peace, and perfection throughout His creation. Every human being on this earth can have all of this, the time he wants in which to do this, when his desires to do it is intense enough. The intensity and the desire itself will reorder the world of people, conditions, the things so that to provide that time, if he earnestly wishes to use it for his upward climb. No person in the world is an exception to the law, for the intense desire to do anything constructive, when it becomes intense enough, is the God power that releases the energy necessary to create and express the things desired. Everyone has the same supreme privilege of contact with the all-powerful presence of God It is the only power that ever did, does now, or ever will raise the personal self and its world above earthly discord and limitations. My beloved sons, try this with great determination, and know God in you is your certain victory. Instagram will be shutting off shortly. Discord and limitation. My beloved sons, try this with great determination and know that God in you, your certain victory. As is discord ended, I began to realize that he must be one of the ascended masters, for he had not only given me proof of his dominion over the elements of his precipitation, but had instructed and explained as he did it. I sat wondering how it was that he knew me. My son, he said, answering my thoughts at once, I have known you for eons. In the raising your thoughts by your own conscious efforts, it made my coming to you possible at this time. While I have always been in touch with you, when you were both in our finer bodies, your conscious efforts of reaching out to someone of the Ascended Masters opened the way for me to come to you in a much more tangible way that is tangible to your physical senses. I see you do not quite recognize me in your outer consciousness. I was present during your birth, at your mother's passing, and was instrumental in bringing you and Lotus together at the right time, that your attainment might be delayed. Again, I assisted in bringing you and your son into association in this embodiment. However, be patient. Sit still a few moments. Just trying to see how far this is. I'm going to shut off here soon and take a break, and then I'll read more. Sit still a few moments, watch me closely, and I will reveal my identity to you. I did as he requested, and in perhaps a full minute, I saw his face, body, and clothing become the living, breathing, tangible presence of the Master Saint Germain, smiling at my astonishment and enjoying my surprise. He stood there before me, a magnificent, godlike figure in white jeweled robe, a light and love sparkling in his eyes that revealed and proved the dominion of his majesty at this. This, he explained, is the body in which I work a great deal of the time when occupied with the welfare of mankind, unless the work I am doing at the moment requires closer contact with the outer world of affairs. And in that case, I make my body take on the characteristics and dress of the nation with which I am working at the moment. Oh, I explained, now I know you, for I have seen you many times, like that in the inner levels of consciousness. My son, he explained, do you not see that the real mysteries actually is? We in the ascendant state can control the atom structures of our world as a potter controls his clay. Every electron and atom in the universe is obedient to our desires and command, because the God power by which we control it and of which we have earned the right to be the directors. Mankind in the unascended state marvel at these things, but I tell you, it is no more effort for us to change the appearance and activity of our bodies than it is for the ordinary human being to change his clothes. The unfortunate condition in human consciousness that keeps individuals in their self-created limitation is their attitude of mind, which either fears or ridicules what it does not understand, or what is still worse, in its ignorance says, that is impossible. A thing may not be probable until certain human conditions, but the God Self, which is the great light, can change all human conditions, so nothing is impossible. Every individual has the divine flame with life within him, and that great part of him has dominion wherever he moves in the universe. If he, because of his own mental inertia, will not exert the necessary effort to reorder his age old habits and mind body, he goes on bound by his chains of his own forging. But if he chooses to know the God within himself and dares to give that God self all control of his outer activities, he will receive the knowledge once more of his dominion over all substance, which has been his from the beginning. The time has arrived when many of humanity are rapidly awakening, and they must in some way be made to understand that they have lived again and again in hundreds, sometimes thousands of lives, each time in a new physical body. That's why I say when you die, you come back in the world, you're not going to give a shit about your friends, family, your mother, your ancestors, or anything else. People are already dead. They're already focusing on their necklace lifetimes. Soon, they'll just get on with their life. They'll be born again and they'll be doing other things. So people who sit there and cry and cry and cry and trap spirits and hold people and keep themselves stuck in misery, that's their own doing. It's not the universe's. And a lot of people are into that practice nowadays. The law of re-embodiment is the activity of human growth that gives the individual an opportunity to re-establish a balance in conditions he has consciously caused to be thrown out of balance. It is but one activity of the law of compensation, cause and effect, or what might be called an automatic balancing process governing all forces everywhere in the universe. The right understanding of this law gives one the explanation of many conditions in human experience which otherwise seem wholly unjust. It is the only logical explanation for the infinite complexities and experience of human creation and reveals the operation of the law upon which all manifestations rest. It makes one know that there is no such thing as chance or accident. All is under direct, exact, and perfect law. Every experience of consciousness has a form, cause, and everything that the same instance is the cause of the future effect. If a man has injured a woman in one life, he is certain to be reincarnated in a feminine form and pass through a similar experience until he realizes and experiences that which he has caused another to endure. The same thing is true if a woman be unjust and injure a man. This is the only way by which one is compelled, or rather compels himself, to experience both the cause and effect of everything which he generates in this world. The individual can create experiences whatsoever he will in his own world, but if he chooses to do that which causes others to experience discord, then he compels himself to go through a similar condition until he understands what the effects of his own creation is upon the rest of life of the universe. That's why a lot of women did wrong as men. A lot of men did wrong as women. And somebody is in your life making you pay for what you did wrong in other lifetimes. That's where you create your own karma. Come with me and we will review the physical life in which you used a feminine form in France, wherein you were a singer of splendid accomplishments with a voice of rare beauty and power. Immediately, without the least effort on my part, I stood outside my physical body, seeing it clearly as I reposed upon the ground. I wondered if it would be safe there on the mountainside, and in an answer to my thought, Saint Germain replied, "Do not be disturbed. Not a thing in the world can harm your body while we are away. Observe." Instantly I saw it surrounded by a white flame forming a circle of about 20 feet in diameter. He placed his right arm around me and I saw we were raising rapidly from the ground, but I soon became adjusted to the vibratory action. There was no definite feeling of motion through space, but presently we looked down upon the village in the south of France. And he continued, "Here you were born as an only child, the daughter of a beautiful woman whose life was an example of idealism far in advance of the majority in that period. Your father was a most devoted husband and companion, highly cultured, inspired by early Christian spirit. The atmosphere ether of every environment records all that has ever transpired in that locality. I will revivify these electric records, and you shall see living pictures giving every detail of your life. You sang at a church of this village and studied with the teachers who persuaded your parents to let her give you training. You made rapid progress, then received still greater advantages. When they moved to Paris after years of intensive study, an opportunity came to sing before the Queen of France, and through her personage, you had appearances at many of her salons. This assured you a successful musical career. France and success lavishes their gifts upon you for the next 5 years, and you accumulated much wealth. Suddenly, both parents passed through the change called death, and that shock to you was very great, followed by many weeks of serious illness. When you recovered and returned again to concert work, a new sympathetic quality had come into your voice through the recent experience of grief. A man who had guided much of your musical study became director of your public work, and you came to depend on him as one who seemed worthy of trust. Then followed 14 years of brilliant success, at the end of which you became suddenly ill and passed on within a week. Your jewels and wealth were left in care of the director to be used to help others to fulfill certain plans for which you had worked all your life. The last rites were no sooner over than a complete change took place within him. Greed took his possession entirely. Now I show you that the man whom you met some years ago here in America, in your present life, the incidents in business, I am quite sure you remember clearly. Here he showed me a business associate in which I had tried to help several people while in the West, some 10 years previously, in connection with a representative from the Belgian government. That man, he continued, was given a chance here to right the wrongs he did in France. He was shown the conditions, knew full well the situation, for we showed it to him. But he was not yet strong enough to permit the working out of the great cosmic law of justice and balance that debt. If he had done so of his own volition, it would have given him freedom in many ways and enabled him to have progressed much more rapidly in his embodiment. Thus does the outer life keep the individual bound to the wheel of necessity, rebirth, continued struggle, and pain until we let the light of Christ within illumine and purify us. We may respond only to the plans of God, love, peace, perfection for his creation. This is the kind of lesson one never forgets, because objective teachings records the experience in the vision as well as in the mind. The record in the sight is deeper and necessarily receive more attention from the outer activity of the intellect. The essence of that long forgotten experience certainly fixed itself in my memory permanently, for I can recall every detail of it to this day as clearly as when I observed it with him. Now, he went on, we will recall another of your embodiments, one that you had in Egypt. He rose from the earth and moved rapidly forwards. I was very conscious of the Mediterranean. We passed over its beautiful water. We went to Karnak and Luxor, then again came into contact with the earth. Watch closely, he said. This record is of a very ancient temple in Luxor, not among those whose ruins the archaeologists are exploring today, but one antedating anything that has been discovered so far. If they knew where to look, they would find magnificent temples in states of almost perfect preservation, indicating a certain spot filled with ruins, which is all that travelers can see today. The scene became replaced by the activities in the ether as it had originally been, in all its beauty and splendor, far more magnificent than anything of which the present generation has any concept. The gardens and pools were surrounded by great pillars of white marble, rose garnet. The entire locality became living, real vibrations, and just as tangible as any physical city on earth today. It was perfectly natural and normal that I asked how he made these experiences so vivid. Man and his creation, he replied, as well as nature, have an etheric counterpart, a pattern which makes an eternal impression upon the atmosphere about him wherever he goes. The patterns of the individual activity and life experiences within his own aura all the time. A similar record exists in the aura of every locality. An ascended master may, if he choose, rarefy or reclothe the individual record of form activity wherever that person happens to be, for the pattern upon which the master coalesces, the atomic structure is always in the aura of that individual. When the master reclothes the record of the locality, he must do it in the same specific place, for such a record, when reclothed, becomes the same living form and structure that it was when first built in physical substance. In this way, it is possible to coalesce again the physical structures of entire buildings and their surroundings when the Ascended Master so desires for the accomplishment of some good purpose. When one has attained the God-given dominion, he can and does reclothe and reanimate any etheric record he desires to make visible for the instructions and benefits of students and others. I'll go back down here. When one has attained the God-given dominion, he can and does reclothe and reanimate the etheric record he desires to make visible for the instructions and benefits of students and others. When he does this, it is real as reality itself, and reclothed objects be photographed, handled, made physical, tangible, and physical senses of one's observing them. Notice, he reminded me, you are experiencing these activities in your finer body, but they are none the less real because of what of your physical body is only a garment which you of the self-conscious thinking and experiencing individual wear. And that's why it's like we're wearing a robe. It is the same as though you wore a heavy overcoat in a cold winter atmosphere and only a light suit of clothes on a very warm summer day. Experiences in your light suit of clothes would surely be less real than those you lived through in your heavy overcoat. I call this your attention that you may understand the fuller or less limited activities of life. We examined the grounds and the surrounding country and architecture. Come, let us entertain, he said. As he spoke, stepped forwards and passed through the main entrance into the temple itself. We then became living actors and at the same time observers of the following experience. We passed into the main part of the temple and proceeded towards the inner sanctuary. The high priest came directly up to us and seemed to know me. This priest of ancient days, Saint Germain explained, is now your son. a lesser priest appeared whom I immediately felt I knew, and he remarked, "The assisting priest was yourself." We entered the inner sanctuary and saw the Vestal Virgin guarding the sacred flame. She, whom I knew, beheld, was Lotus, my beloved twin ray, who I met and married some years ago, and who is the mother of our son. The scene changed, and we saw a visiting prince from a distant province plan to seize the Vestal Virgin for his bride. All seemed to go well until the high priest was shown a vision of what was about to take place. It disturbed him, but he kept his own counsel. Standing guard as the slaves of the prince entered, he watched them approach the sanctuary. As they came nearer, he stepped forwards and spoke but one word that meant stop. One slave bolder than the rest came on. The high priest warned him back, but still he came nearer. When he reached a certain sacred circle of force which emanated from the altar, the priest no longer hesitated. He stepped to the outer edge of the protecting radiance, raised his right hand, and pointed directly at the slave. A flash of flame shot forth like lightning, and the slave fell lifeless on the floor. On the floor, the prince, who was watching, came forwards in an insane rage. "Stop," commanded the priest again, in a voice like a clap of thunder. The prince hesitated for a moment, stunned by the very power of the words, and the priest continued, "Listen to me. You shall not desecrate the highest of God's gifts to the temple of life. Begone before you follow the example of your two brazen and misdirected slaves." The high priest was fully conscious of the power he could wield, and as he stood watching the prince, he was the very embodiment of self-control, eliminated forces consciously held in obedience to his will. He was majesty crowned with eternal power. The will of the prince was powerful also, but he had no control over himself, and as another wave of blind rage swept over him, when he found himself again opposing and giving full vent to lust, he rushed forwards. The priest, quick as a flash, raised his hand. The flame flashed out a second time, and the prince followed the fate of his former slave. Saint Germain turned to me and explained the experience still further. "You see," he began, "this is the way of the qualities within. Every force reacts upon the one who sends it out. The prince and his slave came to the qualities of hate, selfishness, depravity within their own feelings, and when the priest directed the force of which he was the master towards them, it took on their qualities the moment it touched their aura. He merely turned their own feelings and selfishness back on themselves. The priest, in his unselfish effort to protect another, was himself so protected. The incidents closed, the scene of splendor vanished, and again we stood amidst the temple ruins. Saint Germain revealed still more to me, which may not be recorded here. There is only one way," he went on, "to avoid the cosmic wheel of cause and effect, the necessity for a re-embodiment, and that is through the conscious effort to comprehend the law of life. One must earnestly seek God within, make permanent conscious contact with the inner self, hold firmly to it in the face of every condition in the outer life. It will be my pleasure and privilege to show you more, but only for the instructions it will bring to yourself and others. Come, we must return." As we came near my body, and he instructed again, "Watch the circle of white flame disappear." I looked, and it vanished, and a moment later I was back in my body. The sun was sinking, and I knew it would be nearly midnight by the time we arrived home. Place your arm about my shoulder, said Saint Germain, and close your eyes. I felt my body lift from the ground, but I was not particularly conscious of moving forwards. Presently my feet touched the floor, and opening my eyes, I stood in the lodge. Saint Germain was greatly amused when I asked how it was that we could come back in this manner without attracting the attention of people about us, and he answered, "We many times draw about our bodies a cloak of invisibility when moving among those of physical form," and the next second he was gone. I had heard the great Ascended Masters who could take their bodies with them whenever they go, and manifest or bring into visibility anything they desire to use direct from the universe. However, to actually experience contact with one of them was a very different thing. I tried to realize in full marvel of the experience. To Saint Germain, it was evidently a most ordinary occurrence. I sat in quiet contemplation for a long time, in deep gratitude, trying to comprehend and fully realize his explanation of the law concerning desire. He emphasized its importance and activity as a motive power in the universe to propel forward new ideas, compelling an expansion of consciousness to take place within the life of every individual. He had explained it by saying, "Constructive desire is expanding activity within life, for it is only in this way the greater and greater idea, activity, and accomplishment are pushed through into expression in the outer world of substance and form. Within every right desire is the power of its fulfillment. Man is the son of God. He is commanded by the Father to choose how he shall direct the life energy and what quality he wishes his fulfilled desire to express. This he must do, for free will is his birthright. It is the function of the outer activity of the intellect to guide all expansion into constructive channels. This is the purpose and duty of the outer self. It allows the great life or God energy to be used only for the gratification of sense desires and habits of the mass of mankind in its destructive use, and is always without any expectation, followed by inharmony, weakness, failure, and destruction. The constructive use of desire is the conscious direction of its limitless God energy by wisdom. All desire directed by wisdom carries some kind of blessing to the rest of creation. All desires directed by the God within goes forth with feelings and love and blesses always. The next few days I spent writing this record of my experience. Then one morning on awakening, I found a golden card laying at the table near my couch. It looked like a piece of metallic gold, and on it, in beautiful shaded scripts of a lovely violet color, was just one short sentence: "Be at your trusting place on the mountain at 7 in the morning, signed Saint Germain." I put this card away carefully and could scarcely wait the intervening time, so great was my expectancy. Early the next morning, while preparing a lunch, there came a distinct impulse not to take anything with me. I obeyed and decided to trust that my needs would be supplied directly from the universe. Light of heart, I was soon on my way, determined not to miss my opportunity to ask questions, if permitted. As I approached the appointed place, my body became lighter and lighter, until by the time I was within a quarter of a mile my feet scarcely touched the ground. There was no one in sight, so I sat down on the log and waited for Saint Germain, feeling no fatigue whatever, although my hike had been more than 10 miles. As I contemplated the wonderful privilege and blessings that had come to me, I heard a twig crack and looked around expecting to see him. Imagine my surprise when not 50 feet away, I saw a panther slowly approaching. My hair must have stood on end. I wanted to run or scream, anything, so frantic was the feelings of fear within me. It would have been useless to move, for one spring from the panther would have been fatal to me. My brain whirled, so great was my fear, but one idea came through clearly and held my attention steadily. I realized I had a mighty presence of God right within me, and that this presence was all love. This beautiful animal was part of God's life also, and made myself look at it directly in the eyes. Then came the thought that one part of God could not harm another part, and I was conscious of this act only. A feeling of love swept over me and went out like a ray of light directly to the panther, and with it went my fear. I steadily tread, the stealthy tread ceased, and I moved slowly towards it, feeling that God's love filled us both. The vicious glare in the eyes softened. The animal straightened up and came slowly to me. Rubbing its shoulder and leg, I reached down and stroked the soft head. It looked up into my eyes for a moment, then laid down and rolled over like a playful kitten. The fur was a beautiful dark reddish brown, the body long, supple, and of great strength. I continued to play with it when I suddenly looked up. Saint Germain stood beside me. "My son," he said, "I saw the great strength within you, or I could not have permitted so great a test. You have conquered fear. My congratulations. Had you not conquered the outer self, I would not have allowed the panther to harm you, but our associations would have ceased for a time. I did not have anything to do with the panther being there. It was part of the inner operations of the great law, as you will see before the associations with your newfound friend ceases. Now that you have passed the test of courage, it is possible for me to give much more greater assistance. Each day you will become stronger, happier, and express much more greater freedom." He held out his hand. In a moment there appeared 4 little cakes of beautiful golden brown, each about 2 inches square. He offered these, and I ate them at his direction. They were most delicious. Immediately I felt a quickening, tingling sensation through my entire body, a new sense of health, clearness of mind. Saint Germain seated himself beside me, and my instructions began. So I'm starting the next chapter is the Sahara Desert. And I'll read for a ways and then I'll leave off, and then tomorrow or Sunday I'll come back on. Tomorrow I have my astrology course. So like I say, you can see how I'm affected by lots of things around, even in reading. So a lot of this I should be able to read no problem, but it's like things short circuit and my throat just keeps clamping up and different things keep going on. Instead of going forth from the body as in your recent experience, today we will use the projected consciousness, he remarked, as he placed the thumb of his right hand between my eyes and the rest of his fingers over the top of my head. A feeling like powerful electrical current passed over my entire body. Removing his hand, he continued, "I wish you to fix firmly in your mind and recall frequently for contemplations the facts that the law I explain and teach you to use are to bring you into a condition of conscious mastery over all forces and things on earth. This means that no matter what is being experienced, you are always at the very instant in complete conscious control of your own mind and body, and able to use your own free will at all times. In this state of projected consciousness, you are completely conscious and have full mastery over all your faculties every instant. There is nothing whatsoever about any of this instruction and its use that is either of a trance or hypnotic conditions at any time. For in both trance and hypnosis, the experienced individual conscious will is not functioning, which is most dangerous and disastrous activities to anyone who permits it to take place in his mind and body. There is no conscious mastery or dominion in trance or hypnotic practices, and they are most uncertain and dangerous to the soul growth of the ones who permit such practices. Please understand thoroughly that the conscious control, mastery, and use of the forces and things on the earth should at all times be under the direction of your inner or God self through the perfect cooperation and obedience of all outer faculties in both mind and body to that inner guidance. There is no such thing as mastery without this, and those known as the Ascended Masters never intrude any activity upon the God-given prerogative of the individual free will. A student may be given the experience of projection if an Ascended Master chooses to expand his conscious temporarily so he experiences things happening in two or more places at the same time. In such a condition, the student faculties are completely under the control and direction of his own free will at every moment. He is fully conscious and active wherever his body may be, and also at the place to which the Ascended Master chooses to direct his attention for the instruction. The reason an Ascended Master temporarily raises the consciousness of the subject is to show him how he may do the same thing for himself by his own effort, consciously and at will. Projected consciousness is but increasing the rate of vibration of the atomic structure in both the mind and body of the student. This is done by the radiation from an Ascended Master and is an activity of the light which increases the vibratory rate up to the keynote he sets for the experience. In the higher rate, one uses his faculties of sight and hearing exactly as he does in daily life, except they are expanded into the next octave or zone above the human. Such use of your senses is the same as we experience every moment of the waking state, because we can become aware of that which is near and that which is distant at exactly the same instance. The expansion or contraction of our consciousness is dependent entirely upon what the individual desires. This is always subject to the free will and conscious direction of the student. One can, of his own choice, be conscious of a certain tree in a garden or of an entire garden. He uses the same faculty of sight or to observe both, and uses it in exactly the same way. When he wants to see all the garden, he makes his sight enlarged in its activity until it takes in all he desires. The larger expansion still includes the smaller, so you must be conscious of full control of all your faculties in both places at the same time. Your activities that takes place is really an enlargement of the force field in which the sight acts. The use of your faculties of sight in this projection or expansion of consciousness is accomplished by raising the vibratory rate of the optic nerve. The whole process corresponds to things that take place when one uses a field of marine glass. In ordinary experience, human consciousness has been accustomed to use its faculties within certain zones or force fields, and the proof of this is that one can listen to the sound of a person's voice who is physically present in the room speaking to him, and he can also hear the bells of the telephone ring somewhere else in the house at identically the same instance. All the faculties of the outer activity are elastic. They may be used as either a microscope or a telescope, depending entirely upon the desire and will of the individual. If he can be conscious of sound in the room in which his physical body stands, and also be aware of the sound 2 or 3 rooms distant, but by exactly the same process, in a still further expansion of this faculty, he can hear at a more distant place. To do this, one must increase the vibratory rate until it reaches into a more distant zone. When you contemplate this greater inner God activity, do you not see how perfectly and readily the outer senses merge into the inner and what has been to become one? This activity of consciousness can be applied to all the other senses as well as those of sight and hearing. Such a raising process of natural, normal, harmonious, as simple as the tuning of your radios to any desired wavelength. Radio wavelengths and those of sight and hearing are part of the same activity. Sound contains colors, colors contain sound. In ordinary daily experience, human beings can hear the colors and see sound whenever they become still enough within certain octaves or zones. Vibration registers upon the nerve of the eye, and the result is what we call sight. Other registers upon the nerves of the ears, and the result is what we call hearing. The average person's eyes only sees objects whose vibratory rate comes within these certain octaves, for they do not see below the infrared and above the ultraviolet ray or zone. Through the radiation of an ascended master, the atomic structure of the brain and eyes vibrate fast enough to expand into the next octave above the human. This same activity can be expanded several octaves further, either by the master's radiation or at the command of the inner or the God self of the individual. Many persons do have such experience involuntarily, but rarely understand what they mean and how they come about. In cases where individuals have moments of transcendent consciousness or been highly inspired, this is what has occurred, although they seldom recognize the assistance they have been given. Projected consciousness or vision has nothing whatsoever to do with mental pictures produced by suggestion that exists only in the mind of other human beings. Such thoughts and pictures are but flashes directly into the mind of another person by the one sending the suggestion. This is the same activity that takes place when one reflects the image of the sun into a mirror and then deflects it upon the wall. Suggestion is a different and projected conscious, as thinking about a place is different from being physical presence. Projection is vivid living, real as when as your physical body is going through an experience, for it is the action of your inner God self with whom the Ascended Master is one, the Supreme. Saint Germain and I then became observers and actors in the scene of long ago. Again, I was outwardly conscious of going through experiences shown to me in thoughts, feelings, and actions. The entire operation was natural and normal as breathing, and only unusual sensations about it was a feeling of greater freedom and a sense of dominion. We both became very still for the few moments as he revivified the etheric records, and my instructions began. This is the Sahara Desert, he said, when it was fertile country having semi-tropical climates. There were many streams of water carrying abundant moisture everywhere in the lands. In the midst of the empire lay a capital famous throughout the world for its splendor. The executive buildings were placed in the center upon a slight elevation, and from these the city itself extended equally in every direction. This civilization, he went on, rose to the apex 70,000 years ago. We entered the city and felt an unusual rhythmic activity that gave one a strange sensation of lightness while walking. The people all moved about with great ease and grace. I asked Saint Germain the reasons for this, and he replied, "These people remembered their source and knew themselves as sons of God. Hence were the possessors of the opportunity of power and wisdom that to you may seem miraculous and superhuman. Truthfully speaking, there are no such things as miracles, for all is according to the law, and that which seems miraculous to the present concept of humanity is but the result of the application of the law to which mankind's present consciousness is unaccustomed, and so seems strange and unusual. When the reality of life is correctly understood, all manifestations seem miraculous to your present consciousness is found to be just as natural and normal an experience as forming the words are to one who has learned and the use of the alphabet. It is all but an action of the ever expanding, ever progressing manifestation of life in the forms that come about at all times through an ordinarily process of the law in love and peace. No matter how strange, unusual, or impossible an experience seems to humanity's present mental states, it is no proof that there is not a greater law and a wiser intelligence acting to produce greater wonders of creation and surrounding us all the time. The knowledge of the greater mind of humanity in the outer world today is to the greater inner wisdom the power as the understandings of a small child is to the study of calculus. In one building of the centered group, we found the attendees attired in the most gorgeous fabric of soft, radiant colors that harmonized with the interior decoration. One of these acted as guides, taking us to the central building, and there he presented us to the king of this great people. The king proved to be Saint Germain. Beside him stood a young girl, very beautiful. She had hair like spun gold that hung almost to the floor, and eyes of piercing violet blue. Her entire being was one of loving command. I looked inquiringly at Saint Germain, wondering who she could be, and he answered, "Lotus." Beside her stood a young man about 20 years of age and was perhaps 14. The young man was he whom he had seen in the high priest in the temple of Luxor, and the lad was the lesser priest. These were the children of the king. Again, we four were working together. With this glimpse of the former lives, he said, "Let us enter the activities that bless people. I say blessed advisably, and you shall soon see why. The majority of them still retain the full conscious use of all their wisdom and power as sons of God, and this they weld almost without limits, knowing fully well for whence that sprang, and to what they were heirs. The outer was but the instrument of the divine self, as it should be, and was only permitted to do that for which it was created. Naturally, the great inner self would act unfretted, and of course the perfection and activity of that period was one of magnificent accomplishments. At the time of this former civilization, the whole empire was filled with great peace, happiness, and prosperity. The king emperor was the master of the ancient wisdom and a real cupbearer of the light. He ruled by the light, and his empire was a living example of perfection. For hundreds of years, Saint Germain continued. This perfection was maintained without an army, navy of any kind. The control of people was vested in the care of 14 ascended masters of light, two working with each one of the seven rays. They thus form points of focus for the mighty God activity to be made visible. Under these 14 luminous beings were 14 lesser masters who formed the head of the seven departments controlling the activities of science, industry, and art. Each of the departments headed, gilded, or guided the work under his care by conscious and direct contact with the God in himself. Hence, direct from his source did all in all directions and instructions came for those under them. Thus divine perfection was constantly flowing through without any interference from the human. This form of government was most remarkable, successful, and satisfactory in every way. There has never been anything on earth since that time which has even approached such heights. In the ancient records that have come down to the present day, this former civilization is always referred to as the Golden Age, and so it was in every activity of life. In your beloved America, in the not so far distant future will come forth a similar recognition of the real inner self, and this her people will express in high attainment. She is a land of light, and her light shall blaze forth brilliant as the sun, not noonday, among the nations of the earth. She was the land of the great light ages ago, and will again come into her spiritual heritage, for nothing can prevent it. She is stronger within her own mind and body, stronger than you think, and that strength she will exert to raise out of and throw off from border to border all the weights heavily upon her at the present time. America has a destiny of great import to the other nations of the earth, and those who have watched over her for centuries still watch. Through their protection and love, she shall fulfill that destiny. America, we the ascended hosts of light, love and guard you. America, we love you. A similar form of perfect government will come to a later period when you have cast off certain activities within the hang like fungi and sap your strength as a vampire. Beloved ones in America, be not discouraged when the seeming dark clouds hang low. Every one of them shall show you its golden lining. Back of the cloud that seems to threaten is the crystal pure light of God and his messengers, the ascended masters of love and perfection, watching over America, the government, her people. Again I say, America, we love you. One by one, great awakening souls are coming forth who will become clear consciousness of their own mighty, inherent God power, and such as these will be placed in all official positions of the government. They will be more interested in the welfare of America than in their own personal ambitions and private fortunes. Thus will another golden age reign upon the earth and be maintained for an eon. In that period, just preceding this, which you have been experiencing, the mass of people used great airships for transportation purposes. As their development reached a still higher point, they had little need for them, except in the outlying districts. All the official classes, because there were the more spiritual advanced souls of that race, were able to go from place to place in the finer bodies and do all they desired, the same as in your recent experience at Lexor. They also were able to transport the physical body at will, for the use of the power to overcome gravity was as natural as breathing is to you. Gold was a common commodity in that age, as in all golden ages, because its natural emanation is a purifying, balancing, and vitalizing energy of force. It is placed within the earth by the Lord of creation. Thus, great beings of light and love, who create and direct world systems of worlds and evolutions of the beings upon them, the outer mind or intellectual knowledge of humanity holds within its little, very little understanding of the real purpose for which gold exists on this planet. It grows within the earth like a plant, and through it is constantly pouring a purifying, vitalizing, and balancing current of energy into every ground we walk upon, as well as into the growth of nature and the atmosphere we breathe. Gold is placed upon the planet for a variety of uses, two of its most trivial and unimportant ones being that using gold as a means of exchange and for ornamentation. A far greater activity and purpose of it within and upon the earth is the release of its own inherent qualities and energies to purify, vitalize, and balance the atomic structures of the world. The scientific world today has no inkling as yet to this activity. However, it serves the same purpose to our earth that radiators do to our homes. Gold is one of the most important ways by which the energies from your sun is supplied to the interior of the earth and a balance of activities maintained. As a conveyor of this energy, it acts as a transformer to pass the sun's force into the physical substance of our world as well as the life evolving upon it. The energy within gold is really the radiant electronic forces from the sun acting in lower octaves. Gold is sometimes called the participant sun ray. As the energy within gold is of an extremely high vibratory rate, it can only act upon the finer and more subtle expressions of life through absorption. In all golden ages, this metal comes into plentiful and common use by the masses of the people, and whenever such a condition occurs, the spiritual development of that people reaches a very high state. In these ages of the gold is never hoarded, but instead is widely distributed into the use of the masses who, absorbing its purifying energies, are themselves raised into greater perfection. Such is the right use of gold when the law is consciously understood and obeyed. The individual may draw many qualities he desires to himself by the use of that law. Because of the gold deposits in all mountain ranges, one finds wealth and rigor in life upon the mountain that he cannot find at any other place in the earth's surface. No one ever heard of detrimental effects coming to those who constantly handle pure gold. While in its pure state, it is soft and wears away easily. Still, that very quality is the fulfilling of this purpose of which I have just spoken. The more advanced of these people produce much gold by perception direct from the universe. The domes of many buildings were covered with sheets of pure gold, the interior decorated with brilliant jewels in curious yet marvelous design. These jewels were also participated direct from one eternal substance. As in all ages past, there was a portion of people who became more interested in temporary pleasure of the senses than in the large creative plans of the great God Self. This caused them to lose consciousness of the God power throughout the lands until it remained active in little more than a city itself. The capital was called the City of the Sun. Those governing realized they must withdraw and let the people learn through hard experience that all their happiness and good came from the adoration to the God within, and they must come back into the light if they were to be happy. The king emperor, through the inner wisdom, seeing that people were becoming still more deeply enmeshed in sense gratification, realized that it was no longer the divine plan to further sustain the kingdom. He was instructed by those of greater spiritual authority than himself to give a banquet announcing his decision to withdraw and thus bid his subjects farewell. He called the counselors together, gave the direction for the banquet, ordering to be held in a most magnificent place of the empire, known as the jeweled room in the king's palace. This was lighted by the self-luminous globes that emitted a brilliant, radiant light. They were suspended from the ceiling by a chain of crystal. While the light within was intense and brilliant, yet it had an extremely soothing effect upon the body, giving those in the radiance a sense of great ease and calm. The light from the central globe set the jewel ablaze in the sunburst design that formed the great medallion in the middle of the ceiling. The large banquet hall was elaborate, decorated, and set within 24 white onyx tables, set seating 24 guests. This was the first occasion upon which all the king counselors and staff were to be his guests at the same time. The announcement of the banquet caused much comment among the people, who discussed it throughout each with his neighbor, but to all it was a mystery, for none was able to discern its purpose. The evening of the event came at last. No one suspected the sorrow within the hearts of the noble rulers, nor did they dream of the change so soon to come upon them. The hour arrived, the guests assembled, and everyone breathed mystery. The great bronze doors to the banquet hall swung majestically open, and a burst of transcendent music, as if played by a gigantic symphony in the invisible, came forth, surprising even those who knew the tremendous power of their adored monarch. He was looked upon almost like a god by the people, so great was their love and admiration for the wisdom and help he constantly poured out to them. As the temporal music ceased, the king entered accompanied by his children. The girl was a vision of loveliness. She wore a gown of soft golden fabric, unlike any material of our modern world. Overdraped appeared as if covered with diamonds, for with every movement of her body points the lights flashed forth. The golden hair falling over her shoulders was caught with two emerald clasps. On her forehead was a single band of white material set with diamonds. In the center was what appeared to be a large diamond, but it was really a powerful condensation of light, focused and maintained there by her father. The king was the only one in the whole empire who had entrusted with the use of such transcendent power. The royal family had never used these jewels of light in their contact with the outer world until that night. Such use of this power was only permitted in their private worship of the great God Self, of whose supreme presence they were keenly and constantly aware of. Yeah, the understanding of gold, there's, like I say, a lot there. I mean, the Mayans and Aztecs, all kinds of other cultures knew it. The ruler and the two sons were had form-fitting garments of the same soft golden fabric as the daughter. There was palpable as leather, but made of metallic gold, with breastplates like the great sun of jewel. They wore sandals of the same material, also set with precious stones, and a wonderful jewel of light rested upon their foreheads of each. The king gave a signal, and the assembly guests were seated. In a voice majestic and powerful, he poured out an invocation from the depths of his heart to the infinite Supreme One. although mighty O thou, start over. O thou mighty omnipresent source, thou who dost govern the universe, the flame in each human heart, we give love, praise, and gratitude unto thee for thine own life, light, and love in all things. We adore thee and look only upon thee, the presence in all things visible and invisible, evolved and unevolved, those ceaselessly flowing streams of life. Who dost forever pour thyself into all creation, the one self in all. My hearts call unto thee as never before to rouse these, my people, to their danger, for a late indifference to thee is creeping over them like a poisonous breath, producing a soul sleep, and drawing a veil before them, and shuts out thy shining presence. If they must have the experience to consume and burn away the droves of the clouds of the outer self, then do thou sustain and at last bring them forth in thy eternal perfection. I call unto thee, thou creator of the universe, thou supreme, omnipotent God. The king took his seat, and all waited in silent expectations. A few moments the service for each individual appeared before him. Course after course was served, as if by unseen hands, the food coming in marvelous crystal and jewel containers, then disappearing as soon as the course was finished, followed immediately by succeeding ones. Finally, the most elaborate banquet the empire had ever known came to end. All was silent again, as if a breathless expectancy anticipating some most unusual occurrence. The king rose and stood a few moments calmly waiting. Soon the soon the gold goblet appeared at the right hand of each guest. They were filled with condensation of pure electronic essence, and for all who drank it, no matter how far down the age his life stream extended, or how varied his experience, he never could completely forget the God self within. This soul protection was granted to those at the banquet as a reward for their faith and loyalty to God in themselves. The kings and the emperor, the counselors, and those present had served sincerely and continuously for the good of the empire, and for the service soul protection through the centuries was given to them. Each lifted the goblet, drank to the God in himself, to his own flame of the most high living one. The proceedings of the banquet were broadcast to everyone in the empire through a radio similar to that which we use today. I was no It was no larger than the inner plate, yet powerful enough to receive what was happening at any point on the earth's surface. After the salutation to the divine self in each, all became very still, the atmosphere itself seemingly perfectly motionless. In a few moments, the wondrous presence slowly became visible in front of the king. The presence was a cosmic master. From out of the great silence, a murmur of awe and surprise passed over the assembly guests at the appearance, as they recognized in amazement one of whom they had heard for many centuries, yet whose visible presence none had ever seen. Raising his right hand, he addressed those present and all dwelling within the empire. O children of earth, I bring you the warning of serious importance. At the time of the great crisis, arouse yourself from the snare of the sense that is engulfing you, awakening your lethargy before it is too late. This, my brother of light, must withdraw and leave you into the experience that you have chosen, and which is slowly enticing you into the many pitfalls. You have opened yourself to uncontrolled ignorance and emotions of the outer self. You give little attention to the still less adoration of the source of supreme and mighty, the radiant, the majesty, the finite causes of all that is the creator, the sustainer of all worlds. You give no gratitude to the great glorious presence, the Lord of love, for very life by which you exist. Oh, why are you not grateful for the blessing nature pours out so lavishly, for the abundance that comes to you through the fair lands and from your own wise and unselfish ruler? You thank each other for the favors and things of senses and forms that are so emperor that pass from one to another and then are no more. But why? Oh, why do you forget the source of all life, all love, all intelligence, all power? People, oh people, where is your gratitude to life for love, for the magnificence, the experience that you enjoy every moment, every hour, every day, year after year? All this you call your own, but it has always belonged, does not, and always will belong to the one source of life, light, love, all good, God, the supreme, the adorable, the all-pervading one. When by your own misuse of energy of life, which is the all-pervading one, showers upon you constantly, pure, perfect, and uncontaminated, you have created conditions of so destructive and painful they can no longer be endured. You turn in either desperation, agony, or rebellion, call upon God for relief from your misery. This is your offering to the giver of all good in return for the ceaseless perfection which he constantly bestows in supreme love. The only condition upon which the one great self gives all is its right use, that it may bless the rest of creation with infinite joy, harmony, and activity. When in the depths of misery you turn again to your source for relief from this misdeed, you either cry in agony or despair. If rebellious, blame life and the source of all good for allowing what you call unjust or wrong conditions to exist in you and your world. It is you, the little personal self, who are unjust to life, who are unfair, who create the misery of the earth. For only humanity, because it has free will to create as it chooses each individual through its own thought and feeling, only humanity who dares bring into existence the discord, misery, deformity that expresses upon the earth. This is a blight upon creation and the perfection that forever swings the great cosmic melody of eternal song. Only mankind is guilty of making a discord in the music of the spheres, for all else lives and acts in accordance to the law of love, of life, of harmony, and of light. All else blends into the harmonious whole, the body of the infinite, all loving one. All other realms of light and life move and create according to the fundamental principles upon which all perfection rests. The principle of love, if it were not for the great selfless one, like your rulers of the great hosts of ascended masters, whose very keynote of existence is love, humanity would long ago have destroyed itself and the very planet upon which it exists. The transcendent and magnificent activities of love and light are the natural conditions in which God created the expected, and expected his human children to manifest, obeying his command to love. There is no such thing as supernatural conditions anywhere in the universe. All that is transcendent, beautiful, and perfect in nature, and according to the law of love, anything other than that is subnatural. The daily experience of the hosts of ascended masters is the perfection God's children were meant to live in always. Earth's children did experience this perfection once in a former cycle, which was the golden age. So I'm going to leave there.